Did you know Ganondorf has a surname? In A Link to the Past's US manual, the conquest of the Golden Land and subsequent claiming of the Triforce is done by none other than Ganondorf Dragmire. Did you also know that in the Japanese manual, there is no mention of this surname and that it was just made up by the localization team at Nintendo of America? A Link to the Past's manual is notorious for these sorts of lore additions, but it's not the only game that differs from its source material. So today we're going to talk about the purpose of a good localization, how or why localizations can differ from their source material, and examine some of the more debatable examples of localization changes in Zelda to see if they completely alter our understanding of the series. Localization isn't merely translation, but adapting the media to a specific culture or place, a sort of cultural translation, as it were. Not just the in-game text, mind you, but also ancillary material like game manuals, back when those were still relevant. In this way, localization isn't just about literally translating one language to another, but also trying to capture the spirit or ethos of certain cultural idioms or humor or subtext that would be unknown or unintelligible to, say, someone playing in North America, as opposed to Japan. For example, in many Zelda games, the titular princess is referred to as Amiko in Japanese. Amiko is a Shinto shrine maiden, a priestess who historically acted as a vicar through which the gods could speak. Culturally, this is most likely common knowledge for many Japanese players. But if I saw this in-game, I would not only be confused, but miss out on a ton of underlying context. An apt comparison for an English speaker like me would be the oracles of ancient Greece. An oracle and a Miko are not the same, but they share enough of an underlying archetype that I can understand that Zelda is not merely a princess, but also shares a special connection with and is a servant to the gods. And so while it's not a literal translation and Zelda is never referred to as an oracle, perhaps localizing that context would help better capture the Miko ethos, even if it isn't one-to-one. But a localizer must overcome other hurdles besides merely this cultural translation. The first hurdle is that localizers are often translating text from a spreadsheet, devoid of context, sometimes without even knowing who is speaking a particular line, and without developer oversight to confirm connections, tone, callbacks, etc. Second, sometimes Japanese itself is ambiguous, which can lead to some text referring to the player as you in one instance, or as I in another. Both of these hurdles can result in inconsistent or downright wrong localization. Third are restrictions placed on the media by the localizer. Nintendo of America, especially back in the day, had pretty strict rules regarding religious references and iconography. It's why the Bible in the Japanese version of Zelda 1 is called the Book of Magic in English. It's why this image of Link literally praying to Jesus Christ and the Japanese strategy guide of A Link to the Past, which was localized in English from the Japanese subtitle Triforce of the Gods, by the way, never appeared elsewhere. And it's also why the early game's dungeons were referred to as palaces instead of temples, a more accurate translation of the Japanese. This can result in sanitized or completely censored localization. And then there's the fourth hurdle, like Ganondorf Dragmire, who seizes the Triforce from the Golden Land in English as opposed to the Sacred Realm in Japanese. Additions like this surname result from localizations that have gone rogue and, quite frankly, make shit up. It's why in A Link to the Past English manual, Ganondorf has a surname, why the Hylians have magic-infused blood instead of being merely the gods' chosen people, or why, at times beginning, the gods descended from a distant nebula instead of simply onto a world of chaos. Examples which have all flavored A Link to the Past's backstory, even if they're mostly inconsistent with their Japanese counterparts. So clearly a lot of things could go wrong in localization, which made me curious just how much Nintendo of America's Zelda diverges from its Japanese source material. Now I will say there are a lot of nitpicky things beyond even what I pointed out earlier that aren't calamitous additions or mistranslations. Early manuals are also full of erroneous translations about gameplay. If you're interested in those specifics, I'd check out Norky Norky's series Lost in Localization. However, what I specifically wanted to see was if there was any English and Japanese versions of Zelda's lore that were incompatible. Was anything so majorly different as to completely shake up my understanding of the Zelda world? Let's go through a couple of the bigger examples. There are 3 mistranslations which are factually incorrect. The first 2 are from Twilight Princess. In English, the scholar Shad tells us the Uka created the Hylians, and Aru says the sages were Zelda's tutors. However, in Japanese, Shad says the Uka merely created Hyrule, not the Hylians, and Aru was Zelda's tutor, not the sages. The third example comes from Breath of the Wild, where the English claims that Dark Beast Ganon emerged as a result of Ganon giving up on reincarnating. In Japanese, however, this beast form is the result of his stubborn refusal to stop reincarnating. In these cases, it seems best to appeal to the original Japanese, though most likely these details wouldn't distract a casual Zelda player. The next example is based on neither mistranslation nor strange addition, but leaving out details. In the English version of Tears of the Kingdom, Ganondorf is evil for evil's sake, and wishes to rule as that is what a king must do. But in the Japanese version, Ganondorf not only wants power, but to return Hyrule to its rightful time of power, where the strong can stake their claim as they saw fit. While that adds what could have been an interesting contrast to what Raru's kingship stands for, there's so little exploration of that theme in Tears of the Kingdom that I'm not convinced that little bit of nuance makes the game's story any more compelling. And lastly, perhaps the biggest one, you seemingly cannot mention Demise's speech at the end of Skyward Sword without some pushback regarding the difference in English and Japanese translations. In English, Demise's curse implies that he will literally be reincarnated time and time again. In Japanese, the curse does not refer to Demise specifically, but to the demon tribe, and that evil will always rise to take Demise's place in the endless war against the good and just. In that sense, the curse is much less literal, and Ganondorf, Vati, Malladus, these villains aren't reincarnations of Demise, but successors claiming the mantle of evil in his absence. An idea I'm much more in favor of instead of the English implication. Even so, I don't think that discrepancy contradicts the intention or theme of that monologue. All things considered, and barring a few hiccups and irrelevant additions, especially in the early games of the series, Zelda's major lore is largely intact, and most conversations surrounding it don't have to devolve into what language is quote-unquote more canon. As the modern Zelda devs work to incorporate localization into the very start of each new entry's development, I suspect that the differences between each version of a game will grow ever smaller, Ganondorf's motivations and Tears of the Kingdom notwithstanding. Regardless, be sure to salute your favorite game's localizers. And if you enjoy Zelda-related content that covers a whole range of things beyond simply lore discussions, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks as always to our channel members, and a very special thanks to you for watching.